Introduction. I'll go through and do the 10 slides for those who are new here, and I think we'll have a few more coming in, and then we'll kick off with our presenters as well. So let me get over to my screen, and then we'll kick off. If you have any questions, let me know. Let me share my screen first, and we will get into it a little bit. So here we are. So let me put all this up here. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today for another great round of presentations here at TEN Capital. At TEN Capital, we help startups and investors connect for funding for those who are new to the group as well. And let's look a little bit more about what we do. We help startups and growth companies and investors raise funding through our fundraise program. We help with fundraise preparation, campaign strategy, coaching, introductions, as well as follow-up. I think that's our biggest differentiation is we do a series of mailers to follow up the investors, give them more information about the deal, and work them into a due diligence or deep dive process. But in short, we provide the legwork, saving you time and money. We also help form capital for the early stage ecosystem. We help high net worth start family offices as they fund emerging managers. We help VC funds find limited partners, primarily through our high net worth and our family offices. And we help angel groups find members. That's one of the biggest things we do is helped over 35 angel groups find members over the last 7 years. And we continue to foster more capital formation where we can for the early stage. Let's see. We have multiple events that we do each month. We have the Quick Pitch, which is for tech companies on the third Wednesday. We have the Life Science Syndicate, which is this event we have here today. We have an investor education session, which we run at the beginning of each month. And then we have in-person events with the Austin Speed Match and the Dallas Scale Up Pitch. And we also go to Southern California 3 times a year. With that, let's look at the TEN Capital team. This is the group that we have here today. We have 10 people in the network that are on the team that are helping support our network, and we're continuing to grow this as we go forward. We have a Substack newsletter called TEN Capital Connect for those who want to learn more about funding and investing using AI tools. We have a series of prompts, and we also have a session called the TEN Capital Connect event where we bring in a speaker to talk about how they're using AI to invest in startups. With that, let's go to our next slide. For those who are new in the room, we don't really have a lot of startups in the room anymore. They're either companies or investors, but when we did, we would ask them to take a picture of this QR code, and with that, we would fill out the form, and we would see if this is a good fit for our program. So that's, I think, a little bit outdated. I need to take that out. So with that, let's go meet our investor, Kobe Calderon. Kobe, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your group?
Yes, definitely. First of all, thank you very much for this invitation for this pitch day. I'm the founder and the CEO of Gold Ventures Investment. It's a global investment advisory company based in Europe and Israel. I originally from Israel, and we are managing 6,000 investors across the border in 30 countries, venture capital, angels, family offices, and corporate VC. Our aim is to match public with private. It means that our uniqueness is that we know how to help startups, especially, by the way, in medical devices, digital health, biotech, biomed companies that looking for R&D capital. We know how to help the companies to obtain public funding or non-diluted funding from the Austrian funding agencies here in Europe, something between 300,000 up to 30,000. That it could be for pharma companies that could get this money for R&D. And in parallel, we're matching private capital from private investor in order to mitigate the risk of private investor and to leverage their private capital. And alongside this process, we have global marketing agencies that helping the startups in market penetration in more than 30 countries. We are collaborating with international partners in the US, in Europe, Latin America, Asia, Africa, and Israel. And our aim is to invest between 1 million up to 10 million US dollar in promising startups. And we're evaluating the companies today with a digital platform that's called MyNexus that can simplify the process to raise capital from our investors, because we are doing something like 80% of the due diligence. Thank you very much.
Great. And Bruce Imbert joined us. Bruce, can you tell us about yourself and your work?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, I'm working with Therapeutics with Laurence Nore, so I think we have a slot a little bit later
Okay.
to present
Thank you,
what we
Bruce.
are doing. Oh, unless you want me to go through who am I and what I'm doing, and I can do that.
Well, we welcome your questions after each of the presentations and feedback. So we'll do that as
Oh,
we go
no
forward.
questions for me, sir.
Oh,
Okay,
not yet, not yet. We have to
no
have the
problem. Thank you.
presentations first, then we'll have questions and so forth. But with that, let's
No,
go ahead and kick off with our first presenter. Oliver, if you want to launch your slides and kick off when ready. We see your slides. Uh, you're on mute, Oliver.
Let's try that again.
Okay.
Great. Thanks very much for the opportunity to present today. My name is Oliver Bays. I'm founder and CEO of a company called Diagnostics, which is a precision oncology company based out of Calgary, Canada. Now, before there was Diagnostics, I was a cancer surgeon for over 25 years. I was a professor at the University of Calgary, and much of the technology that we developed through my research program has been transferred over to Diagnostics. Qualsure is now a commercial ready company, precision oncology company, and our foundational intellectual property was a test for thyroid cancer, which is currently being deployed in several different countries, including the US, Canada, and Singapore. Our capability to deploy this internationally is made possible because of our cloud-based engine, which we call Molecular Decoder, and we are now transitioning to become an infrastructure company. Importantly, all of this was possible with less than $2 million of capital. We're now raising $7 million Series A, and successful closure of that round will enable us to unlock more than $3 million of non-dilutive capital. So the time for precision oncology is ripe. There's a convergence of technologies, including the fact that next generation sequencing of DNA and RNA is fully possible, and sequencers are ubiquitous internationally. AI has really transformed the way that we look at biology. We have the availability now of foundational models, and I'll talk a little bit later about how we're going to leverage that particular technology. Importantly, also, precision oncology right now is really largely dependent on understanding mutations, but we now understand that mutations are not sufficient, and we need to look at other molecular features of cancers that reside in the RNA level or the gene expression level. So let's go back to the overall larger problem. And that problem is that we give these brutally toxic treatments to people who are already sick from their cancer. And the fact of the matter is that in many instances, the doctors who prescribe those treatments aren't even sure whether those patients are going to benefit. And so there's a really significant need for molecular tests that enable us to personalize cancer care. And those tests need to inform us on the biology of the cancer. The best way that we've identified to understand the underlying biology of a cancer is to look at gene expression. We can look now with next generation sequencing at all of the genes at once, and the pattern of those genes and how they're expressed tells us a lot about the underlying biology, how quickly the tumor is going to grow, whether it's going to spread, where the tumor is going to spread, and what particular treatments are going to be beneficial for each individual patient. This looking at all of the RNA all at once, we call that transcriptomics. It's technically very easy, but the problem is that the output of next generation sequencers is highly variable. In other words, if you change the chemistry or you change the standard operating procedure in any way, then that's going to change the numbers. And as a result of that, companies who've developed transcriptomic tests have centralized their testing. And this is a real problem because when a company emerges with a new technology, a new transcriptomic test, that means that they have very limited capability to actually enter the global marketplace. And I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine, another surgical oncologist in Australia, he wouldn't order Oncotype DX, which is standard of care in North America for breast cancer, mainly because he can't send the sample all the way over to North America with a reasonable cost and turnaround time. So the solution to this, which is our solution, is to develop a centralized intelligence engine, so to speak. So essentially, you can do the testing more closer to where the patient is receiving their care. Our solution, which we call Molecular Decoder, houses diagnostic algorithms and is able to provide test interpretation very, very quickly without having to send samples those vast distances that I just described. So how do I know that we can do this? I know this because of our very first test, which we call Thyroid Guide PX. Thyroid Guide PX is the very first validated test that enables us to determine whether a thyroid cancer is aggressive or whether it's a slow-growing cancer. We know that if it's a slow-growing cancer, then we can treat it more conservatively. Importantly, this test has now been deployed through 3 different labs, one in Canada, one in the US, and one in Singapore. And we have actually gained quite a bit of traction on this particular test. It's now being piloted at MD Anderson. We have a collaboration with Sloan Kettering and University of Toronto, as well as working on some pilots in Singapore. As I mentioned, we already have 3 labs that are performing the testing, and essentially this is proof that you can bring a precision oncology test to the global marketplace in a decentralized fashion. So when we started out, many thought that we were just a thyroid cancer test company, but what we actually are is we are becoming and emerging as an infrastructure company. And that essentially enables us to access the larger precision oncology market, which is over $100 billion and growing. So how do we do this? I'll tell you a little bit more about Molecular Decoder. Molecular Decoder was built really to solve our own problem. We wanted a decentralized testing model so that we didn't have to build our own our own lab. We also found that it took us a couple of days to analyze the complex data that's produced by a next generation sequencer, and we had to create an automatic workflow. So essentially, the sequencing can be done anywhere in the world. The files that are produced from the sequencer are uploaded to Molecular Decoder, which houses all of our algorithms in private key encrypted vaults. And within a couple of minutes, a test report is delivered back to the lab wherever it happens to be anywhere in the world. This is not just a solution for QualSure tests, but this has also been built to house client tests. And so we're currently selling this solution to other diagnostic companies that are reliant on algorithms. We foresee that eventually what we'll be creating is a collection of precision oncology tests or a central hub for precision oncology. But that's not all. What we're also building, which is really next level, is a foundation model that enables us to smooth out some of the variability that I described earlier about transcriptomic tests. As I mentioned before, transcriptomic or next generation sequencers produce highly variable data, and that can essentially be smoothed out with a transcriptomic foundation model, enabling true scaling in an infrastructure fashion of this kind of testing. So essentially, this is almost like ChatGPT, where ChatGPT will understand your language, whether you have typos or use slang or use other languages, and it can essentially deconvolve that information and make it interpretable. And in the same way, our foundation model helps us interpret transcriptomics. This is robust across laboratories. The data that's brought in through the foundation model is reusable, and you can imagine as time goes on and as it becomes used more frequently, it becomes a compounding data moat. So it becomes more and more valuable with time. So essentially, we have now a very different architecture for precision oncology. In the past, we've been reliant on central labs, having to ship samples across an ocean to different continents. But now, with this new infrastructure architecture, we are able to do the testing anywhere in the world, and essentially the test interpretation is done in a centralized fashion. So, as you can imagine, as we begin to deploy all of these technologies, not only are we constricted by the revenue of a single test, but eventually we have access to the much larger, more defensible market of an infrastructure company. So, Thyroid Guide PX has now been released as a laboratory-developed test, and molecular decoder has also been deployed. Our transcriptomic foundation model is now under development, and that, of course, will have to go through additional regulatory requirements. Molecular decoder itself doesn't require FDA approval, but from a strategic point of view, as a differentiator, we will be bringing it through FDA clearance. This is our team. Cynthia is my co-founder. She's an expert in bioinformatics and machine learning. Dave's an expert in cloud computing and cybersecurity. And we have Curtis doing our finances and Stephanie, our marketing lead. We're supported by a tremendous number of advisors with different expertise. And so currently raising $7 million, helping us with the transition from a single test company to becoming an infrastructure company. And that $7 million is a price round. However, with early investment, we'll offer the first $2 million will be offered as a convertible note. Essentially, this investment will help us to unlock an additional $3 million of matching non-dilutive capital. Thank you very much for your attention. I look forward to any questions that you might have.
Great presentation, Oliver. Kobe, what's your questions?
Yes, maybe you can say some words about the business model. What is your business plan and go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so thanks very much for that question. So Thyroid Guide PX has now been deployed as a single test, and we have a follow-on test as well. It's the business model is a decentralized business model. Molecular decoder will be pay-as-you-go SaaS that will be available to other precision oncology companies that are reliant on AI algorithms. And then once we build the foundation model, that will essentially be, because of its capability to smooth out the variations in transcriptomic data, will become essentially the way to access the global market for anyone who's introducing a transcriptomic model or a transcriptomic test. So essentially, that will become a central marketplace.
What is your go-to-market strategy? How are you going to penetrate the global market?
So we have partner labs in the US, Singapore, and in Canada. The Canadian lab has another lab in UAE. And we have a distributor in Israel that we're at the contract stage, another distributor in South America, and then again at the contract stage. And that Singapore partner has other labs that are in Japan and South Korea. So you can imagine that uh, that essentially is the way to do it, really, to partner with other labs without creating your own infrastructure.
Are you open-minded to open some kind of subsidiary in Europe in order to utilize public funding like you have? You say that you have 3 million non-diluted funding. Are you open-minded to get non-diluted funding from the Austrian funding agencies by opening subsidiary in Europe?
Yeah, well, I would never say no to non-dilutive funding, of course, but yeah, I think that I would be very open to discussing something like that.
Okay, I'll be very glad to give you some kind of information how you can do that.
Thanks, Kobe.
Thank you very much.
All right. With that, Shailesh, what questions did you have?
Yeah, quite an interesting model. And Oliver, so you started in the thyroid space, and the test is still commercialized, right? Are you looking to develop other tests as well in other cancer space? And could you maybe also speak to the 3 million undiluted sort of, non-diluted funding? Is that for like a particular project that you
Yeah.
see? How's that unlock going to be?
Yeah, so first of all, the thyroid question, the other precision oncology test question. So we started with thyroid cancer as a prognostic test that enables sort of decisions on whether to treat it aggressively or not. And we have a follow-on test that is highly complementary that predicts whether you're resistant to radioactive iodine. That's probably about a year out from deployment. We also have diagnostic tests for lung cancer and colorectal cancer, but really our priority right now is to get this infrastructure, this foundation model off the ground. So that $3 million, the first 1.5 million or 1.6 million actually is from a group called the Digital Supercluster that enables us to build the foundation model in collaboration with some big institutions like the BC Genome Sciences Center and the Ontario Institute of Cancer Research. The other 1.6 million comes from Genome Canada that is complementary to that and pays for the academic work that also supports the foundation model. So essentially, it doesn't just build. It doesn't just fund the creation of the foundation model, but also the ingestion of new data sets from various different countries.
Great. Thanks for that. Cortland, how about you? Any questions?
Oliver, what you're doing is something I'm doing very similar for another client. So it's a very interesting model. I guess my first question is, what kind of communication problems have you seen between your facilities in Singapore and your facilities in Canada?
Singapore is extremely easy to work with. Yeah, they are just phenomenal. Um, I have to tell you though, I went to South Korea, which is a big market for thyroid cancer, and that was a much more difficult market. And the reason for that is it's a very trust-based culture, and so you have to visit frequently in order to develop
Right.
solid partnerships. So the Singapore group, it already has those kinds of connections, and I'll be leveraging those connections to actually access those kind of markets. Um, so, each one of these things, I would say Singapore's not a problem in terms of communication. They all speak English very well.
Right. Right. I'm sorry. I meant communication between your device and your central reader system.
No problem at all because next generation sequencers throughout the world all produce the same kinds of files, which are called FASTQ files.
Right.
And I would say that the only challenge that will come up as we go into, so essentially there's a connection between the sequencer that's locally, but there's also a connection that goes back to the laboratory information system. So I think as we go to other countries where the language is not English, then we're obviously going to have to create a user interface that's based on their local language.
Right. Absolutely. Because we're doing Arabic as we speak,
Yeah.
which is a lot more fun. However, the one of the issues that we have is the fact that we're using AWS servers for the backbone of the communication system, so that we don't release the software to the end user for protection. And that's kind of why I'm asking is, have you seen any communication problems between
Uh,
the device and your server system?
yeah. So what we do is we basically use a local cloud in order to make sure that the data, the private data, remains sovereign within the country where the testing is being done. And so, like RNA-seq is actually it's like a fingerprint, and so that's private
Right.
data as well. So we transform it into the final numbers before it's brought into a North American cloud focus.
Okay. And how are you addressing, especially for US, how are you going to address the Part 11 requirements for your use of the cloud?
Can you just remind me what the Part 11 is? I'm
Part
from
part
Canada.
Yeah, Part 11 is the software requirements, and basically meeting some of the requirements out of Europe for
Oh,
um,
yeah. So we have
security.
actually we have GDPR compliance and ISO 13485 compliance, and then of course we all follow HIPAA rules within our company. So all of that has been considered as we've built it, and we have essentially a way of protecting the private health information from individuals.
Okay. As you move forward with FDA, just be sure that you do focus on uh, the Part 11 requirements, especially when you
Yes,
file a 510(k),
right,
because that's going to be critical.
100%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Great questions and great answers. Thanks, guys, for that. With that, let's move to our third presenter. We have with us today AccuBreath. Spencer, if you could launch your slides and kick off when ready.
Right, everyone see and hear?
Yes, we can. You're good to
Great,
go.
great, great, great. My name is Spencer Madsen. I'm co-founder and the CEO of AccuBreath. We're a medical device company focusing on uh, revolutionizing emergency ventilation. So, what's the issue that we're talking about? The issue is that when a first responder arrives on scene and they pull out a life-saving technology to save a patient's life, to secure their airway, they reach into their bag and they grab a bag valve mask, one of these. It's a technology that's 70 years old. It doesn't meet today's standards for heart and lung care, and it doesn't have to because it predates the FDA and it's grandfathered in and most other regulatory groups across the country. And so it doesn't have any of the safety features that it needs to if it were to be introduced today. The device itself is only performed properly if it's done with two people. First responder puts the mask on the face, makes sure that they're holding it nice and tight with a chin lift for the airway. And then the second responder makes sure that they squeeze the bag not too hard, not too soft, not too fast, and not too slow. Because if they do any of the things wrong, they either underventilate the patient and the patient can die, or they overventilate the patient and they can cause acute lung injury, which unfortunately does happen often. These devices are used about 100 million times a year. And you can see from just some of the stuff I've shown up here, very often are not used correctly. And it actually causes, just in the US alone, about 190,000 cases of acute lung injury, and 70,000 patients die of acute lung injury across the US due to improper ventilation. These devices are known to be troublesome, but they are used constantly because they are cheap and disposable. And for that reason, they've been really hard to displace until now. And the reason why we can do it now is essentially threefold. First, technology itself, sensors, battery power, and miniature blowers have made it so that we can make something compact and portable. Two, The workflow and the situation with EMS personnel has changed. We are getting fewer and fewer first responders, and yet their workflow is increasing. So the need of a one person or a one person procedure is significant to them. And also to make their job easier, they have a difficult job, as we know. And then three, both standards, regulations, and momentum are pushing for better patient care, safer outcomes, and even the group that manages and recommends the way you do bag valve masks is now recommending mechanical ventilation over manual ventilation because manual ventilation is inconsistent at best. So how does our device work? It is so sorry. Buddy, I told you this was the one time. Sorry. Come here. My apologies. This was the absolute worst time for you to come, little man. Sorry. Um,
No problem. Go ahead.
Came busted in my door. I didn't even know he was here. Um, our device is simple to use, and it's easily done just within the same workflow of what they do with the bag valve mask. You can easily stick it on the patient's face. You can push a button, the device delivers a breath, and it keeps it within safe thresholds. Makes it so you can't overventilate and it can't provide too much pressure to hurt the lungs. On top of that, our device is really easy to use off the patient. You can strap the mask on and you can tube it to the device and it can sit to the side of the patient while they're working on the patient in other ways. You can actually use our device with one hand instead of it being a two-person job. As you can see, our current prototype up here, it fully functioned and works. We've used it on dummies and on mannequins and dictated its data compared to the BVM and other devices. But we need to take it to the next level for complete use within both EMS and military applications. And so you can see the ruggedization design that we're headed to, an improved battery, improved handle, things like that. Of that nature is what we're working on. So, sorry, catching up with my breath here. The market is very large, especially considering this is just the bag valve mask. This is the lowest hanging fruit. 100 million of those devices are used and thrown away across the globe. It's about a $3.5 billion market, growing at just around 6% CAGR. The US is about half of the use cases, but this is being used everywhere across the globe. In some cases, it's the only sort of ventilation device they have at all. AccuBreath is a lot more than just a resuscitation device, though. It's a platform technology, so we can easily help rescue a patient's breathing and prevent the use of a bag valve mask. But then with a push of a button, we can move to other modes. So it then starts to provide the whole continuum of care of the patient. So we can move to BiPAP mode with the push of a button and assist the patient during their breathing during transport. Or if the patient doesn't need to be taken to the hospital, but they still need to get their vitals up so they're safe to be discharged from the first person or for the first responders, they can push a button and turn it to CPAP and monitoring. And so once again, our technology then starts replacing others, which is a return on investment for the first responders. It actually decreased their costs because they don't get a reimburse for each one of their disposables. They have a global code for reimbursement. So if we can decrease their costs, they actually improve their margins as well and improve care for the patient. The device is designed in a way that it's a razor blade model. So the more devices have out there and the more use cases they're used, the better our margins are and revenue as a company in terms of how the disposables have the highest margin. Every patient does have to have their own mask and tube for sanitary reasons, but the ventilator, our device, is a reusable product, and it's actually quite low cost when compared to other ventilation technologies. And speaking of those, here's essentially the competition in our space is the BVM, which we believe we can totally displace. There's a whole market of technologies designed to improve upon the BVM. This little device right here is about $200 per patient. And all it does is provide a safety pop-off valve. So if you squeeze too hard on that bag, some of the pressure is released so it doesn't hurt the patient's lung. And then on top of that, it flashes a light to make it so you know when to squeeze. So it gives you the frequency of breaths. It would be completely obsolete with the use of our technology. These are just CPAP devices. They don't monitor, they don't provide any data. They just blow air for oxygenation. And then there are some very high-end ventilation equipment that are comparable to our technology at a very high price. I've been working with AccuBreath from the beginning. I've been in medtech before that, in aerospace before. Dr. Michael Fogarty invented this technology in an anesthesiology lab with Dr. Sakata and Dr. Orr, who have both had medical device companies, many, many patents and exits. We have 2 fully granted US utility patents with a third under office action right now. We expect that to be granted this year. It all started with our very first investment from a group called Ideaship. They invest solely in the intellectual property of a company, and they are the brainchild of 2 of the largest intellectual property groups across the globe. We're raising $2 million over the course of next 2 years. We're doing that in tranches. We've closed the first $300,000 in a safe, and now we've opened up a $750,000 convertible note to hit our next milestones. The terms of that note are here. We believe that they are pretty competitive, and we would love to have the opportunity to bring more smart money investors on board that can help us not only financially, but help us reach our next goals. These are some of the groups we have worked with and are working with. To date, we've done just under 1.7 million with the National Science Foundation through non-dilutive funding. We have a due diligence report completed by Keiretsu. The Keiretsu members and Park City Angels are the ones that just closed out our safe. And we are in due diligence with other groups, and we have many great partners in this space that have a lot of experience getting through the FDA and to market. Speaking of the FDA, we're a Class 2 device, 510(k), considered mostly safe. It's not an instance of if we get approved, it's an instance of when we get approved and how many hurdles the FDA makes us jump through. But we have a very clear predicate in the auto vent with a BTL code. And so we're very confident our pathway will be around 6 months, give or take, and we should be on the market selling 18 months from today. AccuBreath, like I stated, is a platform technology. Emergency services is the lowest hanging fruit with the highest pain point. However, there's applications in both procedural sedation, aviation, and then the largest market opportunity would come in the future. But it would be the opportunity to have our device regulated in a way that we need to be placed next to every AED in the country. And all of a sudden, from that opportunity, you'd be put in every commercial building, every church that would have a certain size, and the market size could 10x with that opportunity. We are definitely proposing our company will be a strategic acquisition after a few years of sales. For our situation with the razor blade and our incredibly high margins, we have an opportunity around about 3 years of sales to capture 2% of the market. And just give you an idea of what those numbers could look like. That's 16,000 units, 2 million sold in disposables annually, and that's about an EBITDA of 76. So sale price of 5x is where these numbers come from and these what we have going on. And there's a lot of very large companies that could look at us in this space. Thank you, and I'm sorry for rushing so much and that interruption.
No problem. Great presentation, Spencer. Thanks for that. With that, let's go to Kobe. What's your questions?
Yes, Spencer, Spencer, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I got a very good impression from your presentation. I'll be very glad to communicate with you. First of all, because you say that you have already 300,000 from 2 million, what I want to ask straightforward, it's exactly what we can do. We can help you with 1.7 non-diluted funding from the European Austrian funding agencies that looking for opportunities like this. My question is, are you open-minded to split your R&D project to 2 places, one in the US, one in Europe?
100%, we would be open to that. We've even explored regulatory options in countries like Australia for those purposes. So we are very open to that idea.
Thank you. And what about the business model? I didn't get any understanding. What is your business model and how you can take it to the next level?
Great question. So go-to-market strategy for us is definitely leverage our pilot studies with the groups we've already built relationships with. So for us, we're based in Utah. This is the largest emergency procedure group in Utah. They cover about 25% of the state. We have a letter of intent from them to be part of a pilot study. This would provide market validation once we are FDA approved and about 300 or 400 units. Then other local groups we've worked with could be 20 or 30 units. We would take that information and that data, and then we would go to groups like Medical Dynamic Inc., which is a distributor. The distributor would take us to 13 states, about 30% of the US. And from there, we would go from about 400 or 500 sold units to probably 10,000 sold units over a course of a year or two because they are already distributing in every fire department across these states.
Do you have any kind of footprints in the European market? Do you have any kind of discussion with potential partners in this place?
Unfortunately, because we are not FDA approved and we're still behind the design freeze, everything that we've discussed is hypothetical. We're not allowed to provide any marketing claims, and they're not allowed to provide any sort of purchase orders. So we do believe that we can work through these deals quickly as we get closer, but we have nothing firm or set in stone because of that.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be very glad to meet you
Thank you.
in virtual meeting.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Great. We'll be glad to make introductions afterwards. With that, let's go to Shailesh. What questions did you have?
Yeah, hi, Spencer. So quite an interesting presentation, and the interruption was just pretty interesting. No, that's you don't need to apologize, but
All right.
I think important space. I think you're trying to solve for multiple uses versus a traditional AMBU, and so like you said, you have hardware, consumables. Is there a tech piece in it where there could be some AI and potentially like breathing mechanics into this at all? And then you also
Yes.
mentioned about the military. So could you maybe speak to that? I'd love to maybe have a follow-up conversation with you. Yeah.
Yes. And just to briefly answer some of those questions. So the first generation of our device needs to get through the FDA as seamlessly as possible. And so the rescue breathing is user triggered. Anything that's like a full circuit or automated requires further scrutiny for the FDA. So definitely the first product will go through as quickly as possible once we have it done. Product number two will start including other options like automated breathing. So then the first responder doesn't even have to trigger a breath. The device can breathe essentially for the patient. We can do that essentially now, especially with some of the AI and the programmatic learning that is out there. But in order to get through the FDA seamlessly at first, we need to do a more simple product. But with regards to what is possible, I provide this screenshot of what could be a clinical use device, and it could take in all sorts of information because we're one of the only technologies that measures from the patient's breathing instead of just providing breaths. We're actually measuring that. And so we're collecting all sorts of data on the respiratory rate, the position of the head, the tidal volume. There's a lot of things that we can collect, and there could be some value to that data out there for like big data companies in health. And then what you mentioned, the military, the Air Force currently uses the Zols event, which I talked about briefly. It's a 10-pound device. They're about $25,000 each to the public, and they carry them around in Pelican cases. We're proposing a $4,000 or $5,000 device that's a lot more rugged in design, and that could easily be tossed around because our device weighs around 3.5 pounds. So I definitely think there's improvement there for military applications as well.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks for that. Cortland, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Great presentation. No peak well, so I'll try to be nice. Your battery life, what kind of battery life are you foreseeing, and how are you going to improve battery life over time?
Great question. So I'm holding one up. This is a single cell lithium battery from Orbtronic. These are the devices we're currently using. This provides 6 to 8 hours of full operation on a single charge for our unit. So most rescue ventilation lasts anywhere from 15-ish minutes to 20 minutes in a long case. Transport ventilation in an ambulance to a hospital can be 1 or 2 hours, depending on how rural it is. In a state like Texas, for example, could be very far away. Um, the reason why we believe that we can improve upon this is one, our battery should be able to last many hours. And then on top of that, with the new redesign that we're going through, we're going to have a hot swappable battery like a power tool. If you look at this slide, you should swap it in and out very quickly. And then the device itself would have a coin cell just to make sure the settings are the same. So, I mean, like a power tool, you can swap those out really fast. And since breathing is typically 6 to 8 breaths per minute, you could swap it out within in between breaths and it would still operate just fine for the patient, hour after hour.
And then my next question is, because of the fact that you're using air, have you looked at adding an oxygen filtration type of system in order to increase the oxygen content to the patient?
So that's a great question. It's very knowledgeable on your aspect. We do suck in ambient air, so whatever air it is. However, there is a port on the device that if you want to hook up a pressurized oxygen tank, it can take it in and then you can dial the percentage of oxygen. So you can mix the 21% air that we currently have to 100% oxygen and take it up to 40, 50, or 60% oxygen if you'd like.
I was going to say there's another company in Utah that you may want to talk to that already has a filtered oxygen system. That way would remain very portable.
Interesting. I would love to hear whatever the company that is.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll make an introduction afterwards so you guys can talk. Any other questions there, Cortland?
That's all. Thank
All
you.
right. Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Great.
My
Great
pleasure.
presentation. Great question, guys. And with that, let's go to our fourth presenter. We have with us Laurence of Aether. Lauren, if you could kick off when ready.
Sure.
We see your screen now.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the opportunity to present Aether Therapeutics. So at Aether, our mission is to solve the opioid crisis. There is really a need for a novel and pragmatic solution. It still kills more than 50,000 people every year. So the solution we're bringing is this novel compound called ATX-1209 that will be able to go into multiple indications, such as moderate severe pain, as well as addiction, both in adults and peds. Why do I say a pragmatic solution? It's because the opioids are not going away. The opioids are the most efficacious treatment for moderate to severe pain. So what we are doing is we're combining any opioids with our compound into a single tablet. So we'll be able to offer equivalent analgesics. We'll be able to offer control on the pain like an opioid, but without the addiction. And this is really the holy grail. In addition to pain, we'll go into another indication. It's a pediatric orphan indication called neonate opioid withdrawal syndrome. The babies are born addicted to opioid. They go to the NICU for several weeks. It's really a terrible condition. So our goal is really to reduce the time that they spend in the NICU to be able to get off the opioid. The market, the pain market is massive. Just the US opioid market itself is $13 billion. I'm talking about with generic pricing, meaning $1 to $3 a day. So as we'll be able to price at a premium, you can imagine how much we can expand this market. How much of this market can we take? Well, let's take the example of a very comparable market, the oral anticoagulant market. For decades, it was dominated by warfarin, which was a generic drug. And when new drugs come on the market, in particular Eliquis, with a much safer profile, it was able to convert the market. They have 60% of the market. We think we can do as much as well, and we think we can do it even faster with our solution. We had the team to do that. We are a very lean team of seasoned drug developers. So Bruce Imberg is our chief medical officer on the call. Wolfgang Sade is our CSO, a co-founder. We have started companies. We have developed drugs in multiple indications, including, of course, pain and addiction. We have grown company. We have sold companies. So we know how to do that. And we're ready to do that with Aether. So we are raising a 10 million convertible note to go to the clinic and run 2 clinical trials to get to a value inflection point in 2.5 years. We are ready to do that because we have already safety and efficacy preclinically, as well as initial safety in humans with a formulation, an IV formulation. So it's a good investment, financial investment for investors, but it's also an impact story. Look at the picture of this young lady at the bottom. She's the daughter of one of our co-founders. She was a cheerleader, she got injured, and she became addicted to opioids for 10 years. So we want to do that for the patient and families as well. So how does it work? I'm going to try to do it in a very simple way. I'm not a scientist, but before any opioid is taken, think about the receptors. And in the brain, there's a main receptor called the mu receptor, and it is at resting state. Think about a car that is not moving. A patient is in pain. The patient takes opioid and more opioids. The receptor gets activated, and it's like a car that's driving and you cannot stop. It's at full speed. What happens at this full speed is that you get good control on the pain, but the problem is you get also all of the side effects, including dependence that you don't want. So how do we stop with car? We stop the car with our compound, which binds to the same receptor, but what it does, it basically stops the car very gradually. It brings back the receptor gradually to this resting state. And that's how we are able, to, again, think about this novel solution. We have generated efficacy, very strong efficacy in multiple preclinical models, and this model are predictive in this indication. It's not oncology, where unfortunately animal models are not predictive. It's very de-risk here. So we have shown efficacy in animals. We also, again, have run a small study in humans with an IV formulation where we've shown safety and we have shown very initial signals of efficacy. So we have de-risked this program and we are now ready to go into the clinic. And we'll go into the clinic, again, with this oral formulation. So what do we need to do? We need to first demonstrate safety of this oral formulation as given once and then given multiple times over a 28-day period. That's what we're going to do first. And then we are going to show efficacy in a patient population that is taking opioids to control their chronic pain. We are going to show a reduction in dependence while maintaining the same level of pain control. This is really going to be our approval principle. We are going to Australia to do that. Why Australia? Because we can do it much faster than going through the IND filing. The idea will take our data when they're generated in Australia. So we will have a very robust clinical package. There's a really good network of sites and PI, so we know we can run this trial very efficiently. And finally, there is a very interesting tax incentive. We'll get cash back into our bank account. So this is very critical for a small company like ours. So this is the overall timing. We're going to spend 10 million to really do these 2 trials and then get to this value inflection point in 2.5 years. We also need to do the manufacturing of our clinical material that will go into these trials. But again, most of the capital is going towards this program, so very focused. The rest will go into the very lean team that we have, as well as doing, of course, some G&A and IP protection. And so IP, that's where we are right now. We are building a very robust portfolio. We are doing it indication by indication. We start with composition of matter, which is critical in our industry. We are doing that with the co-formulation in pain, so we have filed that. And then we have treatment, method of treatment, IP in the different indications. And as we are going to generate new data, well, of course, building more walls to protect our discoveries. So how are we differentiated compared to the competition? So again, the opioids, they are very strong on efficacy, but unfortunately, they don't have a good safety profile. Most of the big pharma today are looking at non-opioid targets, and they're doing it because potentially they offer a good safety profile. The problem is they compromise some level of efficacy, so they'll never be good, and they'll never be as good as the opioid. We are the only target product profile that would offer opioid level efficacy, but with a very safety profile as well. So we will be unique in this industry. So what we are doing again, 10 million, 2.5 years to get to this proof of principle. We are very confident that we could exit at that time. If you look at the past deals in pain, they have been done with a level of data that have not been as validated as what we would get. But if that doesn't work, then there's not ongoing and endless dilution. We can do another round and get most likely in the pediatric indication. This is often indication. It will be faster. We can go to a phase 2/phase 3 trial right away, get approval, and then exit at that time. So in a nutshell, we have a de-risk investment opportunity. Again, we're ready to go into the clinic. We are 2.5 years from this proof of principle. We had the team and we had the data to do that. We are raising 10 million convertible note at a 13.3 million pre-money. We already have 6 million committed with a 4.5 million from a lead investor. We are going to do an initial close with 7 million at the end of July and do a rolling close to wrap up our round. And remember, this is a good financial investment, but also, and more importantly, this is an impact story. You will be able, by investing in Aether, change the life of patients and families. Thank you.
Great presentation, Laurence. Kobe, what is your first question?
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. Very impressive. I see a lot of things that is a big advantage of this project, that you have a very strong team in the R&D, but what about the business? Who is leading all the business of this company?
Wow, so Aaron Schuchart, our CEO, is our business. He's been, and I think short to go back, but he has been in this for more than 20 years, and his background is MBA, corporate development, business development. He has been with big companies such as Amgen, Novartis, with Lumos and Coherus, where he took public. So very strong business background. And my background is also business and operations, but I got my MBA as well. And I've been in industry more than 20 years. I've done BD, Corp Dev, commercial at Amgen, PDL, Biopharma, Roche. So we are the two strong business people here.
I see. And what is your business model and what is your financial projection for the following, after, of course, after the development and getting the FDA?
So we are not, our plan is to exit. It's to sell to a big pharma. Hopefully after this 2.5 years with this proof of principle data, that's our goal, going to big pharma to get it being acquired. And they will be the one developing and going into the large clinical trials. And it's for pain, it's a big market, but it's also, you need a large sales team. Pfizer, for example, has a 1,500 sales rep team to target general practitioners. So as a small company, we'll never be able to do that. So that's not our goal. If we don't exit after 2.5 years, we'll continue in the pediatric indications because we could potentially go alone, but again, it's not our goal. Our goal is to be acquired.
I understood that from 10 million, you have already secured funding of 6 million.
Yeah.
Are you open-minded that 4 million will come from the European market, from Austria, for example, that can invest in R&D up to 3 million, at least in this round?
So I'm French, our CMO, Bruce is French, our CSO is German. So you have a group of Europeans already. We have approached actually the idea to a French region. We got a little bit of pushback. One is because the opioid crisis doesn't seem to be as an issue as in Europe. So, and they were more thinking about investing in a European company than US company, but very open to the Vienna and the Austrian are more open to that. So definitely want to talk about it.
I'll be very glad to set up meetings with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are lots of research in that area going on in Austria. I know some of the people. Yeah.
Yes,
Great.
definitely. There's huge potential in this market. This is the reason that I'm
Yeah,
here.
it is. It is.
All right. Great. I'll be glad to make that introduction afterwards. And with that, let's go to Shailesh. What questions did you have?
Hey, Laurence, good presentation. Done some work in this space, so and so the question I have for you is in terms of the how will you show the decrease dependence with the trials? And I think you mentioned that there are going to be 2 trials done with
Yes.
10 million. Could you maybe very quickly elaborate in terms of the studies that will be done? So
Right.
help you.
So I'm going to let Bruce first
Yes.
talk about the endpoints and the design of the trial, but I put the slide up here so you can see.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Bruce.
Thank you, Laurence, and thanks for the question, Shailesh. So the first study that we're going to do are in chronic opioid pain therapy patients, and these patients become dependent to opioids because they are taking these opioids to treat their pain chronically. So what we're going to do in the study that you see on that slide, not the one on the left. The one on the left is a basic single ascending dose study. So this one is just for safety, but the one on the right is the one where we have co-primary endpoints. And what we're going to look at is that we're going to look at interdose withdrawal symptoms. So interdose withdrawal symptoms, it's a phenotype of dependence that is found in chronic opioid pain therapy patients. And what we're going to look at is a decrease in 2 different validated scale of dependence. One is the clinical opioid withdrawal scale. That scale has been used and validated in opioid use disorder, and it's a scale that is administered by the physician. And there is also something that is more subjective and that the patient is going to report, which is called the adjective rating scale of withdrawal. So what we are going to look at is a change in interdose withdrawal in this patient. And this basically, as I said, is phenotypically the marker of dependence in these patients. So that's why with that study, we can both validate the indication in chronic opioid pain therapy, but also we know that this is going to have an effect on physical dependence in patients who are receiving treatment for their opioid use disorder. So it's things that have been validated. We don't have any biomarker specific, so we are going to look at exposure response. But I would say it's a pretty straightforward study and validated by scales and things that have been used in the field many times before.
Thank you. It's a pretty nice design. You set it up as 4-week, right? In terms of
it's really short, so don't be surprised by the 28 days. And Wolfgang can elaborate on that. Is that low dose 6-beta naltrexone? I'd say we expect to see a response within less than 15 days. So 20 days is already large for that proof of principle. The only thing that will remain to be validated after that initial study is the duration of effect. So this could be done in a phase 2b, so we can do a 12-week study to make sure that the effect remain. But what we will see within the first 28 days is a decrease in dependence. The other thing is that because we're going to treat patients who are receiving opioids for their pain, we don't want to see any decrease in analgesia, so we don't want the patient to get worse. And the last thing is that most of the time in opioid therapy, you have either agonists, so beta opioids, but there are still opioids that create dependence, or antagonists, and these antagonists create withdrawal, so increases the withdrawal burden. So what we want to see is that we won't have any precipitative withdrawal. So that's the triad. We want to see that there is interdose withdrawal reduction, which is a marker of reduction in dependence, no change in analgesia. So basically, we are making opioids safer for the treatment of pain. And last but not least, no precipitated withdrawal. So we don't act as an antagonist because we are a neutral modulator of the mu-opioid receptor. So we have a pretty good design, I think.
Yeah, I like
I've done that many times in the past. So
Great. Any
Merci.
other questions, Shailesh?
No, thank you. Merci.
Great. Cortland, did you have any questions?
I really didn't, Laurence. You did a much better job than Aaron did, but
I'll tell him. I'll tell him. He'll be happy.
Yeah,
The
I
rolling
didn't hear that.
call,
Sorry.
yeah.
What did you say? Go ahead.
and Wolfgang and Bruce, it's good to see you again as
it's
well.
good to see you too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, great.
Thank
Well,
you.
thanks so much, Laurence, for a great presentation. Great questions, guys. We're at the end of our time. And at this point, I'd just like to confirm the introductions. I have Kobe down for all 4 companies. Cortland, I had you down for QualiSure and AccuBreath. Was there anyone else?
No, sir. You've done a great job in the introductions.
Great, thanks. And Shayla's had you down for Noleus. Was there anyone else?
Notice, and then be interested in the AccuBreath and also Aether.
Okay. I'll make those introductions afterwards. Hope you guys can connect. If you have any questions, please let me know. Kobe, thank you for joining us today. Great, you're welcome back anytime with your checkbook. Just let us know when you can make it. And with that, we'll thank you as Cortland and Shayla for great questions as well. Appreciate you guys a lot. With that, was there any other questions before we sign off today? All right.
No,
with
thank
that-
you.
all
Thank you
right, so
very
you guys
much.
get-
It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you much,
Nice to
all.
meet you too.
Thanks,
Bye
guys.
now.
Thank you.
Have a
Have a
good
good
one.
night.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.